Welcome to the Light Cellar podcast, brought to you by Light Cellar, a place where you can learn to find and craft your own food and medicine. In this interview series, you will meet a range of characters in the health and wellness space that are bringing light to your everyday. You'll hear from a number of different experts on a wide variety of topics. We have several different series within the podcast, including our Wild Wisdom and Storytelling with Blaine Andrusek, the Rays of Light, inspiring wellness in the community, plus solo casts, Q&As, and other topics for you to enjoy. You can find this as a video version, as well as the audio on any of your favorite platforms. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with somebody you know who will benefit. You can also shop online at lightcellar.ca.
We're back?
Yeah, we're back. Welcome, everybody. Whether it's your first time or your 17th time, this is Wild Wisdom and Storytelling with Herbal Elder Blaine Andrusek.
And we're all a year older.
There we are, 2024, we're into the new year. Yeah.
And when people say Happy New Year, I look at them intently and say, I hope so.
Right. Do you have any rituals around the new year, or even thoughts, perspectives?
Not really. I'm not condemning anybody that does New Year's resolutions, but apparently most of them don't work out anyway.
Right.
You know, they might work till the end of January, but
Yeah. Actually, I did a video recently sharing just a different approach, I guess, to New Year's resolutions. Like, I think it's great to have, obviously, a vision for oneself and, you know, where you want to go. But yeah, this idea that just because the clocks change and the date changed, therefore, you know, like starting tomorrow, everything's going to be different.
yeah.
It's a tough thing to do.
I think birthdays are a time to do that too.
Right.
Where you sort of take inventory of yourself.
Yeah.
And say, what do I need to change? I think I went through that for about 3 years, thinking about quitting smoking.
Right.
And New Year's never had anything to do with it. One day I just decided today's the day, you know. But
Yeah.
But you just sort of do that. I guess it's an excuse to focus on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my approach was because, you know, like I always think about nature in that sense of just like, okay, what about this, you know, suggests that it's the new year. I mean, it's a completely arbitrary thing, but the one tie to it is, well, it's the rebirth of the sun, right? The days getting longer, slowly, bit by bit, day by day. And so my approach, and you're welcome to take this on if you want, is to mimic the sun. So if you envision, you know, the summer of your life or a change or a transformation, like where you want to be,
Yes.
you know, in 6 months, then at the pace of the sun, you know, make changes in that way. Slowly bring more and more light into your life.
So we should make a bigger deal out of solstice parties than
We totally should.
New Year's.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And and then when you achieve that, then you celebrate, right? And you throw the big party. Yeah. Anyways, it was a good solstice season. That's kind of what myself and my family and a couple of friends have anchored into over the holidays. I enjoy it all, and in fact, when I woke up one morning, you know, that we're doing the whole present exchange and all that stuff with the family, I was like,
Right.
not in a total bah humbug way, but just kind of like, what is this all for? Like, what are we doing this for? And which was actually really good, you know, for me and the rest of us, because we actually talked about it. We're like, okay, what does this mean? I mean, that's the thing with like traditions and rituals, like they can become automatic, and you're like, wait a minute, you know, like for what? For what point? Why are we doing this? And we all had a nice little check-in, and for me at least, I held that, you know, throughout the season of like, yeah, this is what it's all about.
And so much commercialization with people spending a lot of money on toys and things or gifts or jewelry or whatever that they can't afford
Right.
necessarily. And
Yeah. So, you know, time with family, being outside, that's a big part of it for myself. And then, you know, the gifts, Laura's kind of got a thing where it's like a thing you need, a thing you'll read, a thing you want, and, you know, like just try and like, minimize and be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for my circle of friends and family, as we got older, everybody's already got too much stuff.
Right.
So we should make gifts something that's expendable, like open season tickets, music, opera,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Experiential things, just credit notes for a meal out or something.
Yeah.
And then it's when it's convenient to you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and at large, and maybe because of the generations and where the wealth kind of lies, baby boomers and such, like the economy has shifted that way where I've heard it phrased as like the experience economy. People want less things. I mean, things are so easy to attract and bring into your life. It becomes a hard job to like focus on, okay, we want to limit the amount of things, but experiences, that's what's really most meaningful, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you have everything, I don't want to minimize having things because it is, it's what gives us such a comfortable standard of living, and it's easy to say, things, right, when you've got everything. But yeah, experiences are always deep, more long-lasting. It's true. It's memories, it's connections, and yeah.
We don't need any more neckties or socks necessarily.
Although socks are things that tend to get burned through, right?
Yep. Yep.
Good pair of socks. Cool. All right. Well, here we are. Nice to touch base about the season. On the drive over, thinking about some topics, some areas of conversation, and you had a good one.
Well, it's not something exclusive to me living in a home right now. It's been a big part of my practice for years and years and years. Is there so many people have digestive problems, and stuff that I think we were supposed to learn in about grade 8. Everybody was so pumped full of hormones, though, they didn't even listen, right? And I think if more people understood the digestive system, even a little,
Right.
it would help a lot with how many medications are used.
Right. I mean, here it is. Like, we listen to the news, like, just for context, I mean, I don't think it ever goes away, the issue of healthcare, right? Like, and especially in Alberta, like, we have a premier trying to make some changes because, the healthcare system is a problem. It's got some real serious issues. Yet, you've just hinted at, one thing we could do that actually doesn't really cost anything, would benefit everybody tremendously. And this one small shift of understanding and people applying it in their lives would actually radically transform us as a society, and therefore the burden that people are placing on the healthcare system. It's not going to solve it all, but amazing.
Well, having spent it's 3 years now, first being in the hospital and then being in a care home, it's just brought a lot of what I've always known, or through my career always known, about things that are wrong with the way people just consume food every day.
Right.
So I think maybe we have enough time, I hope, to kind of do a brief version of that. But, we have something called the digestive system, which is on average about a 28-foot long tube with lips at both ends.
Yeah.
Right? And a whole bunch has to happen there called nutrition. So there's particular places where by design we digest certain things. It's not just one soup here or there. Things happen in a particular order. And the first thing is that if you go into digestion is really expensive. And if you go into, or if you are in fight or flight mode, like if you think about where that started in our early history, you might have to run away from or fight a tiger. So running away or fighting the tiger is more important than what's happening with lunch.
Yeah.
Right? And so most people are never going to have to fight a tiger. But we get into all of this crap that happens at school or at the office or wherever, whether it's bullying or an argument with your boss or whatever, and you're all uptight, a whole lot of your digestive tract is just turned off for a few hours. Right? And the simplistic way of looking at it is that there's nothing past your throat that can actually identify what you've swallowed. So if you're in a really lousy mood arguing about politics or what the bully at school did today or something like that, and you eat really quickly, which I'm still guilty of, even though I understand all this stuff, if you don't chew your food well enough, there's nothing past your throat that can identify what you swallowed. So there's all of this, what we call biofeedback loops, where your tongue is actually talking to your liver and your pancreas and your small intestine, and it's telling them what's on the way down.
Yeah.
Once you swallowed it, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and I would say even before your tongue, like the thought, which comes, well, like sight or smell are like the main stimuli, right? Like smell gives an indication, sight, and then also the thought, like, ooh, it's going to be a delicious meal. You know, you get into that mindset.
Yeah, and the thing, I have a lot of respect for people that say grace before a meal, whatever that may mean to anybody, any particular religion or whatever.
Yeah.
But the main thing there is you stop to say grace and be thankful. But if you then go right back into the argument of the day, you kind of wasted your time.
Right.
You know, at least on the physical plane.
Yeah.
So your stomach lining has a lot of little parietal cells, they're called, where we produce hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen, which is an enzyme. And those are the ones that are mostly accountable for digesting proteins.
Yeah.
Whether you're a meat eater or a vegetarian, a lentil stew, same thing, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all about protein. And in your mouth, you have salivary amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Now, if you screw that up, which most people do, there's also amylase coming in your pancreas later. But it's something I've done for people that were clearly consuming too much simple sugar, is to get them, if I see people that are putting like this much jam on a piece of toast, and we got to cut that back, especially if we're looking at the possibility of adult onset diabetes and things like that, where we want to cut down simple sugars, is to get people to just take a square, I don't care what color it is, of bread, and just masticate it and chew it really well.
Yeah.
And it's funny how just talking about this is making me salivate.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so you're breaking down the sugars in your mouth. Essentially, they're already digested before you swallow them.
Yeah.
And when you masticate it really well, you get to realize how sweet a piece of bread is without all that jam.
Totally.
But we're in a hurry and we want our fix, so we slather it with jam. You know?
Yeah.
So slowing everything down is really important. So your mouth is where we start breaking down potatoes and dough of any kind, and telling, like technically we should chew juice.
Right.
If you're going to have a big sip, you don't with a glass of tomato juice. You have a mouthful.
Yeah. What's that phrase? Drink your solids, chew your liquids.
Okay. And then most of us, in fact, if there's anybody out there that has teeth further down than their throat, like if you find out somehow in some kind of scan that you've got teeth somewhere else, I'd really appreciate an email or FaceTime or whatever we do these days, because I'd like to talk to you about that. So,
what's that thing that the chickens have?
A crop.
A crop.
Yeah. So they eat little rocks. They peck away in the driveway to get little rocks.
Yeah.
And then when they eat bugs and things, it gets all ground around in that little gland. It's like a first stomach, really.
Right.
To break it down and digest it. Because at the bottom of the stomach, there's something called the ileocecal valve, and nothing gets let out of your stomach until it's been liquefied.
Actually, the ileocecal valves at the bottom of the
it's the bottom?
small intestines.
Oh, okay. Into the bowel.
In the bowel. So
Thank you.
What's the thing in the stomach at the bottom? I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
The name is escaping me, but.
Okay. Let's put out an all points bulletin that a valve has escaped both Malcolm and Blaine at the same time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you don't chew your food well enough, things sit in your stomach for a long time. And especially things that are hard to break down, like proteins, I got to go round and around and around and around and around and around and around, because you don't have teeth and you don't have gravel.
Yeah. And
the little bit of stomach acid that you always have in your stomach as part of your digestive defense mechanisms. So when I clear my throat, there's bacteria and all sorts of things in there. And there's always some stomach acid there just to protect you from the environment, right? and your own internal environment. So there's always some acid there. But if you're going to have a big steak or a big bowl of lentil stew or whatever, while you're chewing it, your tongue is sort of saying, hey, are you guys awake down there? Because the big guy's having a steak for supper tonight. And they kind of, oh, let's check. And they're kind of getting out their whatever meters and checking the acid levels. And oh, yeah, we're okay. We got some stomach acid here, and there's a bit of pepsinogen going around. We're okay. But with each forkful or spoonful that you have, they're starting to pay more attention, and they quit their card game, and they're kind of going, whoa, this is getting serious now. And he's still having more of this, and the parietal cells jump into action, and your acid levels and enzymes go much higher. So things get broken down, and they get out of the stomach rather quickly, as they're supposed to. But if you don't chew, and you're arguing, and the whole system's turned off, I always use the analogy of you got a top loader washing machine, and you're pouring the soap in, and the phone rings, and you kind of and you pour a little longer than you should, and then put the bottle down and run up to the phone without closing the lid.
Right.
And you use too much detergent. When you come back, there's bubbles this thick running down the hallway. Right. And that's what essentially all sorts of throat issues like a hiatal hernia,
right,
and the bottom of your stomach has much thicker mucous membranes than the top of your stomach, and your throat doesn't have much protective lining at all. So if things have to go round and around and around and around and around because you have minimal stomach acid, they burn the top of your stomach and your throat.
Yeah.
And that's what we call heartburn.
Totally.
And everybody's been convinced by commercials that that's
excess acid. Hence the idea of like, oh, take an antacid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the real problem is you don't have enough.
Yeah.
So you take Tums or whatever, and that makes you feel better, so that's the answer.
Yeah.
But the real answer is try and be calm and chew your food a little bit better, and then you don't need Tums and you don't do all that damage to your throat, right?
And if you need to kind of help bridge, you can use HCl, as a supplement, hydrochloric acid, taking that, digestive enzymes, there's all kinds of supporting things one can do, even shots of lemon, apple cider vinegar, which would seem counterintuitive from that mainstream perspective. But
exactly, yeah, because we just got that one wrong, and that's most of the population.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorites for people that don't want to, like, I don't want any more pills. What else can you do here? The essential oil bergamot, and as soon as I say that word, I'm starting to salivate, because kind of like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
I've used this and done it so many times for people who've had, it's just been, you had a big fight with the boss this morning, and this account has to be done by the end of the year, and then you got to go have lunch, and you only have 15 minutes, and you just scarf it down, and then all afternoon your tummy's just... If you take a couple drops of bergamot, or bergamo, I hate it when people say bergamo. It's M-O-T, and it comes from the Mediterranean area, so you should go all the way and say bergamo. Huh? Not bergamo. It's not. It's just, anyway, it's bergamo. So you take a drop or two. If you get 3, that's okay. And just close your eyes for a minute and breathe it. And it's got more of the relaxing stuff. It's called linolyl acetate that makes lavender relaxing. Bergamot has even more. And within seconds, and it's happening to me, and I'm not even eating. Just talking about it, you start salivating.
Yeah.
And because of the linolyl acetate, you sort of go, oh, and you sort of slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And chew your food a little longer. And and how much does that cost? 3 cents, maybe? You don't even have to use any. You can open the bottle and smell the lid, and it'll still work.
Yeah.
So
I like that, because I know the trick about, think about a juicy lemon in your mouth, right? It's like I start salivating, right? Like your mouth kind of...
Now you're doing it to me.
But Yeah, with the bergamot, it's like you get that relaxation in it at the same time. You kick in the parasympathetic nervous system. I always been able to remember those sympathetic, parasympathetic, because para is like paralyzed. It's the rest and digest mode. Relax.
And the other is fight the tigers.
Yeah.
Sympathetic and parasympathetic, yes. They work oppositely to each other, once again, to provide balance.
Yeah.
So the more protein that you're consuming, the more that you want to stimulate those parietal cells. And one group of plants that do that really well is the entire mustard family. Now, wait a minute. What's this guy saying here? You mean like putting mustard on a hot dog?
Right.
Or on a burger?
Yeah.
Is actually medicinal? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of got used to the taste.
Right.
And what about if we're going to have a big slab of beef? What might we often serve with that? Some horseradish, which is an even stronger mustard.
Or sushi, sashimi.
We have wasabi.
Yeah.
Where we're, even though when we get, it's raw fish, but it's not just right out of the lake. Like it's been frozen at so many degrees for so long or whatever.
Yeah.
So that it's typically safe. But if you had enough acid levels in your stomach, which is achievable, you could actually just eat a bowl of live tapeworms chopped up for lunch.
Right.
And it would be like in the movies what happens with holy water on a vampire or whatever, where live worms would enter that acidic zone.
Yeah.
And it would nuke them.
Yeah.
Right? So when we're out we got onto sushi, I always like to, just while chatting, use my 5G, I think is the Japanese word for chopsticks, and have a couple of dips in the wasabi and just suck it off my chopsticks, and there I go salivating again.
Yeah, yeah.
And that starts raising your acid levels so that you've got what you need to break down the fish.
Right.
Because you're eating raw fish. Right?
Yeah. So here's a question for you, and I know you know a lot about dogs. Maybe you can answer this. Like, I assume, well, I don't know. I'm not going to assume anything. I mean, let's see what you think. Like, dogs have a higher tolerance, because you mentioned about, like, eating tapeworms, eating raw fish. Like, your body should be able to handle that. Dogs are notorious for, like, sticking their noses places, drinking random water, that type of thing. Like, is it the level of their stomach acid? Is it their microbiome? Is it, like, what is it about that they can handle it?
All of our domestic dogs have, over the centuries, come from wolves.
Yeah. All
of them. You can see the family tree in the book. Look it up, whatever. Go Google that. Mm-hmm. They decided that hanging out around humans was sort of a good idea, because humans always had food around, and they liked warmth. Mm-hmm. And so it was sort of a comfortable thing to do, to hang around humans. Yeah. And humans liked having them because once they got friendlier and hung around, they helped them hunt. So we've got one line of the family tree that are the hunting dogs still today, and others that are couch potatoes. But they all started with wolves, and they all had to eat raw. Like I have over the years been there to see what things like in Alberta are wild cats can do to a deer in an hour.
Right.
One day I had parked my truck, crossed a couple of rivers, came up across this sort of a beachy area, looked and saw a bunch of dead standing trees and thought, okay, this is a good place to camp tonight. And it's getting late in the day. I'd like to get a little short hike in. I felled a couple of dead trees and figured I could cut them up when I got back, because it's getting dark. And I went out for a hike. And when I came back, right in my tire tracks in some, let's just call it the beach area, like from here to your car there on the street, like right there, that close to my truck, a cougar and at least one cubber kitten had completely trashed a mule deer.
Wow.
It was pretty much licked clean. Yeah. And there was big paw prints and little paw prints, so maybe they can have as many as 3, often 2, but even just 1, you could see all the little tracks. And that thing was polished clean in 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And the start of my trip when I did my almost 5 months alone in the woods kind of trip. Same thing where we were camped close enough. Sound travels kind of like on water. When it's really cold out, sound travels better somehow.
Yeah.
And everything's, if it's not windy, everything's still. And we could actually hear the flesh tearing of the wolves. Like the guys I was with, my brother and a couple of buddies, were trying to, no, those are coyotes. And I'd been camping every weekend trying to get ready for that trip and listening to coyotes not far out of the city. Yeah. I said, no, those are wolves. It's a whole different sound. Yeah. It's a lower tone, right. And they're sustained longer. Those are wolves, trust me. And so the wolves are howling because they got to kill, so they're calling in the outside circle of family, and they all come in and feed. And we could hear flesh tearing. Wow. We were camped that close. Yeah. And then there's a quiet spell, because the wolves are done. So then the coyotes light up to call in their cousins. Right. The coyotes come in. The wolves are done, so it's safe now. Right. And they come in. And when they're done eating, the foxes and other things come in and feed. And then by morning, the birds are circling. Yeah. And this whole skeleton of what had been a trophy elk was virtually picked clean, which freaked me out, because that's the cabin right there. This is my front yard. Yeah. We're in wolf country, like for sure. You know, so it was quite a while. I mean, even to go for a pee, I had my rifle on my shoulder. Right. Like I wasn't leaving the fire even, to cross the street without a rifle, because I was that freaked about the wolves being that close. And of course, they know that human beings are definitely just unkind, trouble, I'm going to say assholes, and they don't want to have anything. So they realized I was the apex predator for a small area there, and they just keep an eye on what I was doing, but leave me alone, because I might cause them a lot of grief. Anyway, so you kind of get used to the concept. But I find it interesting, and it's been well documented that a dog of any species coming up and licking your baby's face is pretty much better than any sort of inoculation you can get. Right. Because they have so much going on in their saliva. Yeah. That's like our mouths are one of the dirtiest places in our body, where for a dog, they have so many enzymes and things in their mouth that it actually, getting licked by a dog in the face starts elevating. It's sort of like the second step of how important that very first, even if a human baby is breastfed once and then given to a nurse or whatever, just that very first droplets, more than the white stuff you can see, it elevates your immune system, because antibodies that your grandmother had and her grandmother had that go back generations are passed in that colostrum. Yeah. And so a baby that is not breastfed at all starts life with less of an immune system. So in the dog park, there'd be people with their carriages out, and some mother would be freaking because a larger dog ran up and licked the baby's face, and the dog is getting away from my baby, it's going to get sick now. Yeah. And somebody else might calmly be sitting there, and I've seen newspaper articles about this once in a while. They're trying to get the news out, where somebody else nearby might say, no, they might get their own baby out of the carriage and call a dog over to just give it a tongue bath, because it's like getting it's better than a vaccination. Right. So they have a lot going on in their mouths. Yeah.
That must be similar to almost all animals that clean themselves through their mouth, right? Like use their tongue, like a cat does that. There's something going on there, hey?
Cats are preening. They're control freaks. That's like somebody overdoing their hair too much. Okay. But it's still part of the process. Yeah. There's am I okay here? Like cats should, never mind a kitty litter. They should all come with a mirror, I think, to make sure that everything's okay. But yeah, they're constantly preening to make sure that, especially their paws, are clean, because they're going to eat somewhat with their paws, kind of things. A lot of them dive in head first, but it's a big part of the whole thing. So stomach, then, we want more acid, and this myth that people need an antacid when they get heartburn is just silly. And how much money as a culture do we spend on Tums? Right. You know, and then another thing that makes me crazy is that people they've got some fixation with having ice water with a meal. Now, digestion is expensive, and all those enzymes that I've started talking about, if you had all that you would ever need, you'd need a body as big as a moving van. So back to that, the tongue is talking to those organs. You have a little bit of those enzymes around, but your tongue is telling your whole body, the endocrine glands, the digestive glands, things like your liver, your pancreas, are all getting instructions from your tongue. And if you gorf your food, and suck things down, these guys might have been asleep, and so you don't have enough enzymes.
Right.
And when you have anything cold, it slows the whole system down.
Yeah.
And anything that dilutes the enzymes slows the whole system down. And you're not even done breakfast at supper time.
Yeah.
It's taken you so long. So it's very simple. You shouldn't really drink anything with the meal, and if you're going to, it should be no colder than room temperature. You'll see a lot of Asian people that if they're not in the mood for some tea, they'll just have a cup of boiled water cooled down with their meal.
Right.
So if you're into that, a glass of red wine, some tea, whatever it might, some green tea, anything warm.
I was going to mention even like, you know, the British are known for like room temperature beer, that kind of thing, which similar to the wine would have its own enzymes and probiotics.
Yep. So if you see somebody run into a 7-Eleven for lunch and they get some sort of foot-long sandwich and it's got, I don't care what in it, but you know, a greasy burger or something, anything like that, and then they wash it down with this jumbo-sized Slurpee.
Yeah.
The biggest insult there isn't even, we can talk about the food from a different direction, but the biggest insult is washing all that down with a big sugar-laden, ice-cold drink.
Which, honestly, a lot of these, like, pops, you know, that you would get, and, you know, sometimes they literally are that massive, or even just a smaller container, or even lemon water or whatever, which is, you know, not bad in terms of its contents. Like, the ice is put in there as, like, a cost savings, right? We can give you a bigger glass because it's 3/4 full of ice.
But we've trained generations of people that's actually,
Yeah.
that's what they want.
Right.
And it's the worst thing you can do for your digestive system. So drink water, or whatever, even just water, drink water all day, except with meals.
Right.
And every restaurant does it. They come in and pour your ice water for you, and they, you know, you should come in. And a few people in the know, if somebody does that, and I say, oh, I'm sorry, could I have some room temperature water, please? They'll kind of look at me and smile a little bit because they realize I know what they know, and they say, and they go, "Sure, good for you," you know, and they go get it for you, you know. It's the first thing it's the first thing we get served. Somebody handsome or pretty is serving our meal, and they come out and fill your glass with ice water.
Right.
Bad thing to do.
How about a little aperitif? Is that which the one? What would you have before and after? Is it aperitif, like appetizer, appetite, or is it digestif?
I think you got it right the second time.
Okay. Yeah.
So certain herbs
Yeah.
stimulate certain enzymes as well.
Yeah.
So as things get through I still want to say ileocecal valve. But I think you're right. It's
Yeah, I got to look it up.
Anyway.
Definitely ileocecal valve is like.
So what happens is, as things leave the stomach, they're still highly acidic. And if you just opened up and dumped a whole bunch of that chyme into your small intestine, it would literally digest the small intestine. And you can get ulcers for that reason that are in the small intestine. The intestine's it's digesting itself because of your stomach. So what happens is all of the enzymes collectively in your pancreas are alkaline. And the pancreas is right there, handy location. And every time that little valve opens at the bottom of your stomach, a squirt of pancreatic enzymes come to more or less neutralize the mixture.
Yeah.
All right? And then you got a whole string of different enzymes in your pancreas designed for different jobs. And a lot of foods are absorbed in the small intestinal wall, firstly, and certain nutrients. And other things that are more water-based are absorbed more through the bowel lining. That's why when something has to get flushed out, like you've eaten something bad and you have diarrhea, you end up quite dehydrated because you're just flushing and flushing and flushing. But so I'm going to back up here a little bit. So at every time, also handily located, is your liver, and your liver produces bile, and bile is sort of like the automatic dishwasher detergent, and it emulsifies fats. So what do we like to use as a herb with really rich foods, cheesy sauces, fatty meats like lamb, the way I like to cook lobster with a lot of garlic butter and things like that. So you got all of this really what we call rich foods. You need more dishwasher detergent to break down all of those fats, and that's what bile does for you. So the best stimulant to the liver to produce more bile is rosemary. And what do a lot of those dishes, what do I put right in with my garlic in the butter with mustard, good quality mustard, is rosemary. I love it. And you can grow rosemary in that window. It's mostly north facing, whatever, and it looks good and it still has some flavor. But rosemary, when it's growing in the sun and getting slapped in the face all day, every day with real photons, it's virtually sticky. And I just smile in my own garden, which I don't have anymore, breaking off a whole branch and just rubbing all the needles off with my fingers, and then just stopping and, and if you don't wash your hands heavily afterwards, that rosin is on your fingers for a long time, right? And even that just makes me smile thinking about it. Totally. So rosemary is there to help break down fats. It's one more part of the process, emulsify fats, right? So all of these things come one step at a time, and a lot of the digestives that we've learned about over the years aren't there for their flavor. We just got used to that. They're there for what they do. Right. It's a chemical exchange, right? So then if we're the other way around now in the ileocecal valve, now you've got the lymphatic system is where you have a lot of your immune enhancing qualities, and there's tiny little white blood cells that are barely larger than a red blood cell, but then there's these big macrophages, like here's a red blood cell, and a macrophage is this big, and they're so big they can't even get into capillaries and such. So we park them in places where blood comes in and gets filtered. So there's this macrophage, and you have bacteria in your blood, and the blood comes through these lymph nodes. And where do we have most of them? Everywhere outside of the core. We got to protect all these vital organs, right? Yeah. So we have a whole lot of them just prior to that, like your tonsils, right, is the closest thing to your vital organs. And then at the other end of the tube, that's where your appendix is. And we have, there we are stuck on which valve it is, but you have massive amounts of lymphatic vessels at both ends of the tube so that they can help filter out a lot of bad bacteria and such. They're the ones that, phago means to eat, macro means large, so the big eating machines, they can come in and they've got kind of like a frog's tongue. Yeah. I didn't bring that book today. They have these tentacles that come out, and they could pick off something on the windowsill over there. And they suck it back to their body, and they start digesting it. And that's another whole story. I can't go there. But they break down and literally digest and consume a lot of bad bacteria and whatnot. And they do this thing, this is getting to antibodies, they're called, where maybe some junk they just whipped off the windowsill there has Alberta license plates, so they're kind of creating antibodies that are looking for specifically Alberta license plates because we know they're bad for you. That's another whole story. Anyway, we have a lot of them at the bottom end of the tube so that bad bacteria can't escape from the colon and start coming upstream into the small intestine.
Yeah.
So that's why we have that valve there and a whole bunch of lymphatic vessels so that we keep anything that's coming back upstream basically safe.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a different pH as well. So you mentioned about the acid alkaline. Like it's an alternation between alkaline in your mouth, acidic in your stomach, alkaline in your small intestines, acidic in your large colon. And that ileocecal valve is so important, as you mentioned. Like, so there isn't this kind of backflow of bacteria back up in there.
Right.
And if so, SIBO, it's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is no fun. And it can be caused by a number of things, but one of the causes could be, the ileocecal valve not functioning properly, and then you get that backflow of bacteria into the small intestine, and it'll really mess things up.
So, appendicitis and tonsillitis are essentially the same condition, where
isn't it so funny that they're like, we don't need those.
Yeah.
We don't know what they do.
Yeah, we just cut those out. And
Yeah.
I had one cousin who actually had his tonsils out at a very early age, and they grew back 3 times.
Wow.
And you'd think somebody would have kind of paid attention to that. Like, this kid really wants his tonsils. Maybe we should think about that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Have you ever heard of an appendix growing back?
No.
No, I haven't either. Just when you mentioned tonsils growing back. Yeah. Well, that's cool.
I had a cousin who had worked her way from being an RN up into the head of the politics involving the nursing system, and she had nothing better to do once in a while, and she went through all the files she could access with details of appendectomies and came up with the number. I forget what it was. It was something like 4% were probably medically required.
Right.
And the rest of them were done because they were handy.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Back to what's wrong with, why is healthcare so expensive? That was what we were talking about at the start of this. Yeah. If we all took just a little better care of ourselves, man, we could save a lot of money for the system.
Yeah, totally.
So I realized that every once in a while there's a big crash with 100 people injured, some of them critically and some of them mildly, and that we need to have a lot of nurses on staff for those big days.
Right.
But, being in the hospital, I look around at like how little, like there are days when the bells are ringing and they need every one of them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of nurses that don't do much during the day.
Yeah. And those big days are usually near full moons, aren't they?
Yes, well, that ties in a lot of parasites now.
Right.
So we have,
which I've heard can be a cause of some appendicitis.
yeah, there's, this is going to shift things a bit, but it's okay. We've become, oh gosh, I don't know where to begin with things. So Louis Pasteur gave us this whole thing called germ theory, which changed the world. And another fellow at the same time, I don't know if these men ever met, but they were working they were about the same age, was a guy named Dr. Lister. And he was a surgeon. And when he started his career, far less than half of people survived surgery. I forget what the percentage was, but it was more like 20% might have survived. It was somewhere around that line.
Yikes.
And simply because of sepsis. Like, the only thing they had to clean the instruments with was vinegar. So acetic acid helped some. It's better than nothing. But he might have dried blood on his smock from 2 patients ago, and the whole surgical suite was really filthy.
Right.
And I got thinking about this when I was a guest of the CICU at the Foothills for a day, and I was right in the room with 4 cardiologists, and people were getting their forget appendix. They're getting their angiograms. Thank you. Angiograms done, And then if they needed to, the old way of doing things was to go in with a little balloon and that whole story. But invented right here in Calgary, bless you, past cardiologists, the stent was invented in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and is now used in every cardiology ward in the world.
Right.
That's something to be proud of as Calgarians. So we get people at times that have clogs in their big arteries, and we go in with this thing. It's almost like I think about old hair curlers. So we go in with this thing that can be, it's inflated and stretched out, and then they take the balloon away, but the pipe stays there. And some people are walking around with 5 or even 10 of them in their heart, the major pipes. Anyway, that's another whole story. But where were we getting lost there? On parasites.
Parasites.
Listeria is one that you brought. I think, is that what you just said? There's a particular worm that was commonly found in pork.
Right.
And so people today still think they have to cook pork to death to make it safe, where all you need is 165 degrees for 20 seconds.
Right.
And any good chef knows that. They use a thermometer.
Yeah.
So you can cook a pork roast that's virtually like rare in the middle, nice juicy roast, instead of baking it to death and having this hunk of like, whenever, and that's, the home is so bad for that. A lot of institutions think that they're so afraid of bacteria in meat that they just cook it to, I'll get a slab of, I used to make moccasins for people, and I look at a slab of pot roast that I get on my plate, and I'm entertaining the other people at my table, because I look at it for a while and I say, I think that's about a lady's size 7, you know, because that's what it's going to be like, is eating a piece of leather.
Right.
You know, if you're going to do that to a cow, please become a vegetarian.
Right.
You know, that's just something that comes up a lot. So, and most problems when it comes to food poisoning are because the average, just a normal North American, doesn't know much about handling food safely.
Right.
You know, and I see people go out, they've got some errands to run, and they go buy their groceries first, and then they go shopping for shoes and take the kids to a movie, and this stuff's sitting in the car for 4 hours. Like, I do all of my food shopping with a cooler and some ice packs.
Yeah.
And at stores that will allow me to, that's the first thing I do before I leave my truck, is put the cooler right in the shopping cart. And especially with things like fish, I'm buying some salmon fillets, and I like those big flat packs you can get at places like Army and Navy and Canadian Tire, that are ice packs that are only this thick, but they're big flat things.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll put those right on top of the fish, and then you work your way up to the less. I think about times where I've had somebody at a supermarket throw things like a tray. Why do they use trays? So that they don't leak the blood that's dripping off the on sale this week chicken thighs. Right. It's in a tray to make sure it doesn't leak, right? And they'll throw some romaine lettuce and a couple of trays of dripping chicken blood into a bag and say, have a nice day. At one particular atrocity of that, I just looked at the teller, who I knew had worked in that store for at least a decade, because I'd been in the neighborhood that long. Is there a manager on the floor? And she said, is there a problem, sir? And I said, well, I think I should, I'd rather take this up with the manager. And she, well, why? And I said, could you get me a manager? And the guy comes in and says, what's the problem, sir? And I said, could we take this to your office? I don't want to make a big scene here. And he took some persuading. Yeah. So he led me to his office, and he went around and sat at his desk, which was covered with paperwork. And I thought, perfect. And I held the bottom of the bag with one hand and the top, and reached out over his desk of paperwork and let water and chicken blood splatter all over his paperwork, and quite yelled at him, "This can't happen in your store! People will die!" And he just froze, looking at me, knowing I was entirely right. Call a staff meeting!
Yeah.
Teach you how to pack a bag, you know, like.
Yeah.
And that still happens in a lot of stores, right? So some people think I'm an idiot or a fuss bucket or whatever because I want to pack my own cooler, because they're still doing things like that. Yeah. You know, the meat goes in the bottom, it's covered, it's done the proper way with the trays the right side up, and lettuce is at the top, where you know, and that sort of thing. So ultimately the stores get blamed but it's a way that a lot of people handle the food themselves.
Right.
You know, a lot of bacteria love spikes in temperature.
Yeah.
So we've grown up with this. People like to complain about how many chemicals are in their salad dressing. Is that ever horrible? But what do? You're having lunch and you take 17 bottles of stuff out of your fridge and have it on the table on a summer's day before you put it back in the fridge again just to make a sandwich.
Right.
How about get that stuff out of the, you want to have nice organic condiments, get them out of the fridge, make your sandwich as quickly as you can without sweating about it or anything, but just be pragmatic about making your sandwich and putting all of those things that you're not going to eat back in the fridge as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And then you don't need all those chemicals anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's kind of goofy, but we blame the companies or the stores
Right.
when it's our shopping habits that are the problem.
Yeah, and I
What we
would
do.
say further upstream, it's the kind of the raising of animal foods in that way, like milk, that type of thing. Like I think raw milk's amazing, but pasteurized milk, because of how it was transported, I suppose, is one of the things. But in kind of a modern day dairy operation, right?
Right.
They're in their own filth. They're like too crowded. They're not being fed proper diets. Like there's a lot of strain and stress on these animals in an environment like a feedlot operation, that kind of thing. Like very unsanitary.
I was almost threw up the first time. Like as a photographer, I've photographed all sorts of different things and learned a lot about different industries.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw how our regular chickens are raised, or
Yeah.
one of them was turkeys, I always pictured a turkey coming from, it's Thanksgiving and we have this bird that's been walking around the farm for a couple of years, and Gus is going to go for Thanksgiving this year, and somebody chops his head off and they got him and all that. Those turkeys are something like, I don't know, 2 months even
Yeah,
old. Like they're
just a few
They're
weeks.
power
Yeah,
raised,
totally.
And so the
And not only that, like they're just like how we'll breed, for certain tomatoes to have a certain like appearance and flavor and this kind of thing. Like animals are selected, at least in those circumstances, to have, okay, we want the big breasts and this type of thing. Like,
Right.
I've heard of stories where, for whatever reason, a turkey kind of survives past the the 2 month part where it would have been killed, but it can't walk because it's fallen over because its breasts are like weighing it down.
it's kind of like silicone boob jobs, actually. Like, a lot of those women need back surgeries later.
Right.
Anyway, that's a segue,
Yeah.
but we didn't need that one. I don't know how off track we are, but
The turkeys, right? 2 months old or whatever. It's
chickens come from a hatchery, and they go in one big barn, and by the time they're about this high, they get moved to another barn because literally 30% of them died
Right.
from being so close quartered. They're literally,
Yeah.
shoulder to shoulder. And then that's okay because they'll fit in the second barn because there's more room because a whole bunch of them died. And then that happens twice. They get moved from one barn to another until you get, in a matter of weeks, as we're saying, we get your basic chicken.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that had a life and some real food and got to walk around a farm for a while and
Yeah.
see the sky and breathe.
So
Yeah.
as we talk about this, the answer is not to become vegetarian. I did that for a long time in response to things like that you hear about, like CAFOs, confined animal feeding, and just the horrible modern industry of raising animals for food is just, it's nasty. And that was one of the reasons I became a vegetarian for so long, and I'm not. But it's making better choices, supporting farmers that are doing it in a more, proper, ethical, ecological way.
And things like, I love kale chips. But when I found out that kale is planted to clean up industrial sites,
Right.
and that most kale chips are full of heavy metals and other things,
Right.
that
And goitrogens too.
I want to make sure that any kale chips I'm going to buy are organic,
Yeah.
because most of them have a lot of crap in them.
Yeah.
So from one set of lips to the other, there's so many things that you can do
Yeah.
Eating fruit for dessert is wrong. Why? There's a whole science called food combining. So some foods want to get from one set of lips to the other. Like if I have an empty stomach and I eat a piece of apple pie, it can go from one set of lips to the other in about 20 minutes, I think. So we've eaten a big supper, we've had steak and salad and various things, and then we have a piece of which want to go real slow. In fact, commercial lettuce has laudanum in it, which is laudanum is a I'm missing a word here. Anyway, it slows everything down. That's why people smoke not heroin, opiates and things that slow everything down. And so when you've eaten a whole bunch of lettuce, it slows your digestive down. And the meat has to be in your stomach a long time to get broken down before it goes through that ileocecal valve or whatever, which one it is. We'll figure that out eventually, probably on the drive home. And then you throw in an apple pie, which wants to go from one set of lips to the other really, really fast. It's sort of like...
Well, it's more simple carbohydrates, right?
Yeah, it wants to go really fast, and this other stuff wants to go really slow. So it gets to be a mixture of traffic there, and I think of the apple pie as being something like somebody winning the lottery and buying a Ferrari, and they go out on the Deerfoot, and they're zipping around from lane to lane to lane, and all of a sudden there's a, not for any particular reason, just the truckers union decided to do a show of force. So they're blocking all 7 lanes, including the shoulders. And this guy in the Ferrari comes zooming up behind them, and he's trying to get through there, and he's like, wah, wah, wah. You know, and that's your apple pie, unless we have an antibiotic with it.
Right.
Then it won't form gas. Like burps and gurgles and farts are all about bad food combining. You're forming gases that aren't very healthy for you. Mm-hmm. So they've got to come out one end or the other, so we burp and fart a lot because we don't eat correctly. So, but if you put something like cinnamon, doesn't that taste good with an apple pie? Cinnamon is a broad spectrum antibiotic. And many years ago, spices like cinnamon, you couldn't UPS a truckload full of them. They were carried in camel trains and things across the desert, risking piracy.
Yeah.
And, you know, like...
They were so valued, treasured.
Yeah, I mean, people were slitting throats, you know, and over the spice traders, it was a very cruel trade back then, which is why things like, at one point in history, in a place like England, as isolated as you can be from their source, black pepper, for example, were sold by the each. You didn't go buy a bag at Safeway. They were sold from a spice merchant, and you would buy them by the each. And if we had supper tonight at your place, and we were at Malcolm's for supper, we each got a peppercorn. Mm-hmm. No. That was more extravagant than the whole rest of the... Yeah. You got a peppercorn? Yeah. Where now we get out the grind, we've got electric ones with headlights, and so we take these things for granted, and we've gotten used to the taste. So using things like oregano, for example, another very powerful antifungal antibiotic, is why do we put it on things like spaghetti and meatballs? Because spaghetti and meatballs is a bad combination. Right. We've got carbs with meat. Mm-hmm. We should eat the carbs first. So this thing about having apple pie for dessert, your kids will love this idea. You should eat dessert first. Yeah. And then wait about 20 minutes, and fruit of any kind should typically be eaten by itself as a snack. Mm-hmm. Or you know, you want to wait at least, I don't know, people, I hear different time frames, but you want to have fruit at least, say, 20 minutes before a meal, and more than that after a meal. Right. Unless you put the right spices with it, right? Then you can break the rules.
Is that where a lot of curries come in terms of like, because a lot of them are like pulses and lentils and things that I personally find hard to digest?
And all the curry spices are there to help you break it down and digest it safely. Yeah. And everywhere in the world where there's a problem, either with what food is available there or where there's risks, things like bad water, like all of those little Chinese formulas that we use for going to Mexico or China or India or whatever for digestive problems, the first thing, I think about Kurin, the Kurin tablets, berberine hydrochloride, that sort of stuff. The first thing on any of the formulas, the first thing on the list is cinnamon. So that you can have diarrhea from any cause, food poisoning from something living in your fridge too long, or fish laying around. I just think it's goofy how even my own father and his crowd would have been fishing just one generation ago. You catch a fish, you're going to keep it. They had a tub in the boat in the sun, and they'd catch a fish, we're going to keep it. They'd beat it on the head with a club until they quit squirming and throw it in the tub. And it would lay. So something with really, really, really healthy fats, like a lake trout, the fats were rancid before the thing even got cleaned, never mind cooked later.
Right. Wow.
So I want to slap people that don't go, especially for trout fishing, with a cooler full of ice.
Right.
Or what we do to save issues is just reuse soft drink bottles, soda bottles, and refreeze them, forever, kind of thing, and throw a few of those in, and then handle them as quickly as you can once you get back to the shed where you clean the fish, and then if you're not going to eat them within 2 days, we vacuum pack them and get them in the freezer.
Right.
And then you can thaw them later, and those very, very useful, essential, why is it called essential? Because you can't make them yourself. This has nothing to do with essential oils. That's a whole other story. Essential fatty acids are essential for making hormones and other things in your body. If you don't have them, you can't make them yourself.
Yeah.
You can make other things. You can turn silica into calcium, but you can't make essential fatty acids. So the food that has them in there should be handled carefully so that they're not rancid.
Yeah.
I'm getting carried away. But so it goes. There's so many things where a store will get blamed and blacklisted, and people will stop shopping at that store anymore, where it's more likely that their own handling, like when I see people there's still people out there, stupid isn't polite, inexperienced, uninformed people who will actually have burgers made, patties on a plate, and take it out to the barbecue in the sun and cook the burgers, and without washing, put them back on the same plate where the raw blood was.
Right.
That sort of thing. A lot of people do that.
Right.
Or they lay around, they make the burgers and they lay around on the counter in the kitchen for 2 hours before the coals are ready. Or, that sort of stuff that we do that's just wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of stuff, especially when we go out, or even worse, when we end up in a hospital, it seems, there's a lot of bad food handling.
Yeah.
And we eat in the wrong direction. But that's what people want to do because they've grown up having apple pie with dessert and with cinnamon on it, so that's what we want to do.
Right.
How about it tastes good, let's face it. But or like you said, in curries, where they're made in hot countries, where things did lay around for quite a while as part of food preparation, they needed more spices.
Didn't have refrigeration,
Yeah. Why is lemongrass used in stuff like we have lemongrass chicken, lemongrass rice? Because things like that were in countries, like you just nailed it, they didn't have a fridge. And if you cooked a bunch of rice and didn't eat it all, it's so full of fungus by breakfast time that you should just throw it away.
Right.
But if it's got enough lemongrass in it, it'll still be okay because lemongrass is antifungal.
Right.
And we got used to the taste, right?
Yeah. Cool. No, it's good.
Herbs and spices.
Yeah. If it's a society, a culture, we can kind of nail this and get it. Things would improve. And this is what keeps me optimistic. Yes, there are so many problems with the world, our modern day society, it's complex, it can be overwhelming to think about it, and yet there's so many small little fixes, little shifts that we could all each individually take on, and that if we did, it would make a world of difference. So yeah, digestion is just one of them.
So many people, I've been to dinner parties where I'm kind of just, maybe I'm in the kitchen to get some ice or something, or the wine out of the fridge or whatever, and notice that somebody's got a whole bunch of prawns in the kitchen sink with the lettuce that got rinsed on the other side, and their fluids are virtually merging. Right. And I might say, Carol, were you planning on boiling this lettuce? Oh, we're going to have it in the salad? You realize there's shellfish blood on the lettuce now, and
right.
Everybody here is going to get food poisoning? Really? Like, a lot of people just don't know things like that. You know? Yeah. Food handling.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hope you enjoyed today. I think we had fun. We're just a little past the hour mark.
I had fun. Did you have fun?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Always a good time. Yeah. Cool.
A few ideas. Herbs and spices aren't there for what they taste like. They're there to make food safe.
Yeah. And aren't we blessed? Aren't we blessed in this time to have abundance? You know, like you say, we can go and just like buy a bag of black pepper.
Yeah, access to all of them.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, there's a few that have kind of fallen out of favor. Maybe, you know, I always think, like, isn't it incredible that like black pepper made it? Of all the spices, it made it to the table on par with salt. Could have been anything. Could have been what's the other one, like bird's eye. No, it's not bird's eye. Man, I'm having too many names escape me today. The little round, what's it called? Anyways, I've got some in the cupboard. I'll give you a taste, see what you think.
Not mustard?
No, not at all. It's not so common. You know, and like tonka bean is another one. Very uncommon. You know, like it's got some properties similar to vanilla, flavor profiles, that kind of thing. Like,
right.
Yeah, black pepper's amazing, but maybe we should do an episode of like talking about all the different types of spices and maybe some of the more uncommon ones.
Yeah, that's one I've done as a talk many times over the years, is medicinal uses of things that are already in your cupboard.
Yeah.
So you don't have to listen to us talk and then run out to the health food store and spend a whole bunch of money on a bag full of stuff. A lot of things that you already own are useful for a lot of reasons you've never heard.
Yeah. Grains of Paradise, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh.
Yeah, Grains of Paradise. It's got an incredible flavor. It's similar to black pepper. It's got a different kind of like, it's like a gentle kind of wave of heat that comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Maybe we'll bust that out for the next show. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to give it a like, share it out.
And we get some, but keep those requests coming in for...
yeah, any comments, questions?
Comments, questions that you want us to cover?
Yeah.
We'll fit it in somehow.
All right. Okay, till next time.
Bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a like, share this with someone you know who would benefit, and subscribe so you're up to date with all the new episodes coming out. You can shop online at lightcellar.ca, as well as visit us in the heart of Bowness in Calgary, Alberta.